Edge, welcome to the Spotlight on Innovation. I'm very pleased to have with us today a friend and fellow Gator, Mr. Bruce Brandes. Bruce joins us from Nashville, Tennessee, where he is a partner at Martin Ventures. As you see on Bruce's bio posted online, Martin Ventures is a venture capitalist investor, and by that, Martin and Bruce and his team, the Martin Ventures team, which Bruce is an integral member of, are involved in cutting-edge and disruptive technologies, and that's where they find investment opportunities. Bruce, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but as you know from the past, I asked this question to start our journey with you. And what is your definition of innovation?
Well, I think innovation is seeing things as they are and recognizing that there may be a better way or a different way of doing things than you see today. And I think it's really smart engineers who often prompt an innovation. And one of the reasons why I appreciate the opportunity to be in this group is throughout my career I've seen a lot of different innovators, and a disproportionate amount of them have an engineering background. So I think it's the innovator is someone who sees what isn't yet there and helps to make that happen, challenging the status quo.
You've worked in your career with innovators. Not all innovation succeeds. How do you know the difference between a successful innovation and one that is probably not going to win?
Well, first of all, you really don't.
You don't.
There are lots of things that over time I would have bet against or have bet against that turned out to be very successful. And there are a lot of things, a whole bunch of things that we bet on that turned out not to be successful. So it's somewhat of a crapshoot, maybe an educated guess at best.
Mm-hmm.
But I think fundamentally I look at what's the problem that is intended to be solved, and does it matter? Is it a big problem that people would care about? And are you doing something that's better than what others are doing or what the current state is? And I think that's generally where I'm more inclined to place bets.
Last week during the Spotlight on Innovation, our guest mentioned about solve the problem with a very narrow focus to it. Make sure that that problem gets solved. And then consider, can it be scaled to a much larger audience? I think you're touching upon that by mentioning about what is the range of the solution. Can you expand on that, please?
Sure. So I'll use actually the example of my experience with Airstrip, and I'll give a quick background. But Airstrip is a platform for mobility in healthcare, which was innovated back in 2005 by an obstetrician and a technologist who wanted to eliminate the traditional barriers that limited how a doctor would interact with real-time patient data, specifically waveform data at the time, and saw smartphones, and think about where smartphones were in 2005, had the vision to see that this portable computer in everyone's pocket could actually be the source for seeing all kinds of clinical data that otherwise you'd have to go to a computer or to the patient's bedside to see. And as you can imagine, the possibilities are really endless with that concept, especially almost 10 years ago when the idea was first introduced. But we stayed very focused. Instead of trying to solve all the things that could be solved, we focused specifically on labor and delivery. And as we were founded by an obstetrician, we were laser focused on when a mom's in labor and the baby's heart tracing and the mom's contraction patterns are going on at the bedside on the paper or on a screen. It's really when a physician's away from the mom in labor, which is most of the time while she's laboring, the physician really needs to see that to visually interpret it. And most of the mistakes that are made that lead to unfortunate outcomes are when there's a communication breakdown between the nurse who's at the bedside trying to verbally describe something to the physician who's not there, who's trying to visually interpret something that they can't see. And so we stayed laser focused on solving that problem and capturing market share and quantifying an outcome before we ever thought about how this would apply to cardiology and to monitoring patients in the ICU and to many areas where we've taken it beyond since then. We spent 4 years exclusively focused on solving the problem in obstetrics, which was key to our market success.
The point about getting laser focused on something should resonate for industry, especially for edgers who are working in organizations called industry-leading companies. And we've always thought of entrepreneurship with a focus on the smaller venture. But intrapreneurship, working on cool leading edge projects within larger organizations, is equally important when it comes to the innovation journey. Now, what you described is an organization spends 4 years doing a deep dive on something is really the standard operating procedure for a lot of industry. They get deep into it. So for the majority of our graduates, undergrad or grad engineers, you're going to work in industry. You're going to take a deep dive on some very small problem to, a very large problem, but you're going to get very small in how that solution impacts a very large problem. Yeah. Right?
I completely agree.
Okay. So you've worked in an industry, healthcare, for 25 years, and you have seen remarkable change, and yet the disruption seems to be, it just seems like we're right at the cliff of jumping off to the most disruption in healthcare.
Well, it's funny. I started my career out of business school, just so happened to get a job with IBM, which assigned you by industry vertical, and they assigned me to the healthcare vertical. And I was really excited about it because I looked, as I got to understand healthcare, and this is in 1989, I said, gosh, healthcare is really, really screwed up. Certainly technology should be able to fix this. And it's funny because you fast forward 25 years, and healthcare is much more screwed up now than it was 25 years ago even. And so you wonder, did we really help things or did we make it worse? Or was the industry going in the wrong direction? But the underlying issues and opportunities that really prevented meaningful disruption over the last 25 years are really now starting to ease and align in a way where the underlying financial and clinical considerations that have restricted healthcare's abrupt change and disruption for all these years are really finally starting to ease. And so we are seeing technology at a place where it's accelerating the disruption opportunity.
And that technology is born of engineers. I mean,
for the most part, yeah.
You and I are finance majors. We're not creating the technologies that are fueling the disruption.
No, and actually, honestly, when I look at my career, I kind of cringe whenever someone calls me an entrepreneur because I've never been the guy to come up with the idea. What I've been good at through my career was to partner with people like the founders of Airstrip that I described, smart engineers, smart clinicians that need a healthcare business guy to figure out how do we take these good ideas and actually scale it and bring it to market and monetize it. And so I realize that's really my place as a finance guy.
And you use some terms that are all synonyms for you're an execution person. You deliver, you execute the plan, bring the technologies into the marketplace, figure out ways to sell them, and then wash, rinse, repeat.
And also have enough understanding of the market needs to develop the right strategies and to know when to adapt. Because often what you think you're building and solving initially is not ultimately what you do.
So that requires a pivot, which should be second nature to engineers, or it is second nature to engineers, especially those who subscribe to innovation. See, because the pivot allows you to just stay one step ahead of the wave of opportunity. If you're not pivoting, then the wave is eventually going to crash on you, and you'll drown. Right? I mean, what I've been very fascinated, Bruce, about what you've done is you've always found a position to be at the front of the wave.
Well, thank you. I'd like to say it was completely orchestrated and intentional, but I don't know that I was that smart. But I think when I first got the job at IBM, I thought I'd work there 30 years, get a gold watch, retire, be done with it. And that was a career, because that was what most people did then. It was kind of the tail end of, you're a lifer when you get with a particular company. And of course, my parents look at my career and they go, Bruce, why can't you hold a steady job? Because every 3 to 4 years I'm switching companies again. But the logic behind it has always been, I want to focus on solving problems that I think matter the most and being part of an organization that I believe is making a meaningful difference in helping to address those market needs better than anyone else. So generally when I get hired, my job is to help to take these good ideas and initial clients and help scale the business pretty rapidly. And one of two things happens. Either that does happen, in which case I work myself out of a job in 3 to 5 years. We get through some sort of exit, and we've accomplished, with an earlier growth stage company, we've accomplished what I was hired to do. Or get in there and make it clear that it's not going to be a fit and it's not going to work. And ideally, the sooner you can realize that, the better to cut losses. And I've had a couple of those too.
Who's the decider when something doesn't work? Is it the marketplace that raises its hand and say, no, we don't want that, let's keep iterating back in the lab?
Ultimately, I think the customer has the ultimate vote. Generally, if you're close enough on the inside and are self-aware enough and can put your ego aside, sometimes you'll realize it from the early indicators of what the market's telling you before it's abundantly clear to everyone. And that's really when you need to start to think, okay, is this completely off base, or do we just need to pivot? And so keeping your finger on the pulse of what customers and prospective customers are telling you, I think, is the fundamental lifeblood of a good organization.
So our colleagues in Edgeland can relate to what you're saying because they work in organizations, whether it's for-profit, non-profit, government agency, military. And again, for all of you who serve in the military, thank you for your service. But yet they're constantly reminded that they have to address the market's needs, and if they don't, then they can end up losing. We do an exercise which you know about here called the Innovation Obituary, and it's where students will report on innovations that have died or they anticipate that innovations will die. You should know that we have some crystal ball watchers here in the class that have predicted the demise of Apple, a $700 billion company. That's going down. You heard it here first. Short that stock if you really want to retire by the time you're 25, everyone.
People have said that a number of times about Apple, by the way. Although I don't necessarily disagree that the bigger they are, the harder they may fall.
They will fall. Apple did fall once before, by the way. They didn't go completely out, but
they had to reinvent themselves.
They did,
though.
And Mr. Jobs did. So this brings not just our speculation of which companies are going to fall, but a concept that we're learning about in our innovation journey, which is through design thinking innovation. We've addressed these 3 different innovation strategies: the need seekers, the market readers, and the tech drivers. And in the example of need seekers, say Apple or maybe Procter & Gamble, would go actively seek the marketplace input. Steve Jobs is certainly not agreeing with that statement because Jobs said the customer's not going to tell us what they want. We're going to tell the customer what they want.
Henry Ford made the same comment 100 years earlier.
Yeah. I mean, but P&G is a perfect example. We see countless stories and business cases about how P&G had to pivot because, well, the marketplace told them something different, that the lab people might have gotten a little wrong. Yeah. What's been your experience in dealing with maybe companies of that profile, but that are need-seeking when it comes to innovation? Meaning they're going to go out after the end user and try to get some feedback as to how to build the product to satisfy those needs.
Well, first of all, I think that's really where, from an investor standpoint, that's where the real significant opportunities and home runs happen, are from companies like that. I think critical to those companies are to have their own point of view and their own thoughts and validate it with the market and pivot as they get better information rather than coming blindly asking the market what they want. Because if you don't have a more advanced point of view, it's my perspective that there's someone else who probably does and is helping to lead customers where they need to go. Because again, back to Henry Ford's comment, if I'd asked people what they wanted me to build, they'd have told me a faster horse. I think that you have to have your own point of view and be bold enough, as Steve Jobs was, to stick to your beliefs when you know it's true, and factor in what the market's telling you. But with that comes great opportunity and great returns, but also great risk because either being too dependent on what customers are thinking and saying may pull you into becoming commoditized, or having too much of an ego and going out on your own for too long without keeping the finger on the pulse of what the market is responding to is also a recipe to fail.
You've in your career, you have successfully collaborated with very smart engineers. You and I know that the engineer is usually the smartest person in the room. You put a bunch of engineers in the room together and it becomes this explosive dynamic. And yet, you know that the engineer, the successful, surviving engineer needs to have the marketplace tell them a little bit something that maybe they're not like, well, you shouldn't be using it that way. Yeah. How does an engineer kind of swallow her pride and say, okay, well, maybe that user is right and maybe it shouldn't be used in this way?
Well, I think ego is a double-edged sword. I think you have to have enough of an ego as an engineer to stick to your beliefs and get past the naysayers when you're first coming up with an idea. You're going to have people who tell you all the reasons why it's a bad idea and all the reasons why someone else can do it better than you can. So you have to have a big enough ego to get past all that. But there's a certain point when you arc where you have to recognize that sometimes you need to check that ego too and listen to others. And I think the real key to that is to surround yourself with other people who might challenge you, who you respect, and for you to be able to listen enough to have a healthy debate about what the concerns are, and for you to check your ego and really actively seek out people to tell you all the reasons why this might not work.
So Martin Ventures is an investor on the earlier stage in innovations that will disrupt the status quo. So it's a bit like, what's the expression, standing in a cold shower ripping up $100 bills, right? Because you're finding you're really you're surrounded by pain because you're making a very big bet on something that just may not ever materialize from a return on investment standpoint. So this brings to my next innovation strategy. There's this whole market reader, which the example used was Samsung. They're very good at following the wave. They didn't start the wave out there, but they're following it. Does Martin have an appetite for being the market reader type of investor, or do you want to go for the need seeker type opportunity?
I would describe us as more aligning with need seekers, okay. Although there's plenty of opportunity for the market readers. What we're looking for to disrupt healthcare, though, generally are people who are need seekers. The followers that will come behind. A part of our challenge is trying to figure out which of the need seekers are going to be the ones to be successful. Once you find that one that's going to be successful, then you have the market readers that follow behind them, and it may very well be that someone's going to come along behind that leader and do it better than they did it, and ultimately put them out of business. It's one of the reasons why you have to know when to invest, but you also have to know when it's time to divest yourself of that investment. And ideally, you do it before, for you're investing in the need seeker and it's having growth and success, and the market readers coming behind them to basically copy what they've done, but maybe do it cheaper, better, faster. You have to be smart enough to know when that's coming and get out.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good lesson for engineers because remember, most innovation is incremental improvements. It's not this greenfield opportunity where you're taking gazelle-like leaps forward. So if you can find small opportunities to improve, then you are, by definition, a market reader. Then bringing up the rear is this third strategy called tech driver. And the example used is Google, where Google realizes that it creates this remarkable cutting-edge technology, and now it just needs a market application for it. And who knows what Google's mandate was when it started out? Anybody? Pardon me? Don't be evil is their, don't be evil was not their business strategy to start with, but it's done them very well. Srini? Organize the world's information. Imagine that. That's called a big, hairy, audacious goal. Right on. So, but that wasn't a business model. Organize the world's information. Like, okay, who's going to pay for that? Well, the world said, well, we're not going to pay. But online advertisers saw that as a platform. And online advertisers subsidized our search in Google. when Google turns around and says, oh, by the way, we're going to charge users to search, we're probably going to say, no, thank you, we're not interested. So be grateful that you're subsidized to be on Google and on Facebook and I think Snapchat now, but pretty soon advertisers are going to say, it's not working for us anymore. So this brings up the tech driver. How does Martin Ventures see an opportunity to invest in tech drivers? Because that seems like such, a leap of faith.
Well, it's funny because we see where we are through my my Airstrip experience. I got really connected when Apple came out with the iPhone, and they wanted the iPhone and iPad to be relevant for healthcare. They really embraced what we were doing at Airstrip, and we became the face of their healthcare initiatives. And so I got to know a lot of the really smart tech entrepreneurs on the West Coast, and they all decided that they were going to come fix healthcare because they saw $3 trillion and it's broken. And certainly we're smart. We've reinvented the retail industry. We reinvented the music business. Certainly we can fix healthcare. And the challenge that we saw was they didn't understand the realities of healthcare. And healthcare is different than other industries in a lot of ways. And so they were building a lot, and they are still building a lot of really powerful technologies that they think and potentially could have great promise for healthcare, but it's hard for us to make some of those bets without really understanding the realities of how the market would receive it and who they're disrupting so we do invest in big, bold tech companies, but those are kind of a wild bet.
Do those companies find you, or do you seek them out?
Well, we've tried to, we opened an office in San Francisco, we have an office in Nashville, and our whole idea is we want to operate at the intersection of healthcare and technology, Nashville representing the traditional bricks and mortar healthcare services delivery entrepreneurs, San Francisco representing the pure tech people. And so we really want to be at that intersection. The best way for us to get there, we do a lot of, by having an office there, and we do a lot of networking with the other investors and entrepreneurs and incubators that are pure tech people that are looking for people who really understand healthcare. And so we're actively seeking them out. They're actively seeking us out as they hear about us. So it's an interesting fit.
Bruce, Srini asked this question. Srini, I'm going to see if I can get this right with a couple different follow-ons to Mr. Brandes. Is there a way to innovate affordably in healthcare? You mentioned a $2.7 trillion annual spend in U.S. only. That's not small numbers. So Srini's question is, can we innovate cheaply in healthcare?
Oh, I think absolutely.
How?
Well, there are some really interesting dynamics happening in healthcare that lead to a different type of disruption. I don't think if healthcare is going to be disrupted, it's not going to be by GE or IBM or Johnson & Johnson. The reality is they are large and have a lot of vested interest in keeping things the way they are. It's not probably going to come from two guys in a garage, but I think that there are entrepreneurs that have an idea that can be important to solving a very specific problem in healthcare, and I think if we do that right, it doesn't take a lot of investment to solve a specific problem. I'll give you one example of a very narrow problem. One of our companies invested, it was a hospital entrepreneur who looked and saw that they were managing their physician contracts at their hospital with pen and paper. And doctors who had to account for their time to get paid for their medical directorships and the other things that they did for the hospital were actually literally filling out scraps of paper that were getting input into a spreadsheet for them to get paid. So the doctors hated it because it was a waste of their time and inefficient. And the hospital was scared because they were spending millions of dollars on these physician contracts, but they had no idea where the money was actually going. And so this hospital administrator resigned, built an application that basically codified those agreements so that you can manage the spend, allowed the physician to be able to use their smartphone to check in and out of meetings so that they could account for their time. And frankly, it really wasn't a very expensive application for her to build, but no one else was doing it. It solved a very painful problem that everybody was struggling with, particularly larger health systems that have many hospitals with a wide variation of contracts with their physicians that they may or may not be in compliance with. And the Office of the Inspector General would be very interested to know if they have physicians getting paid for things that they're not doing. And so it's really a big problem. And she built a very simple application that is being adopted very rapidly. And I don't think she invested more than initially. She went through a healthcare accelerator before we invested in her. To build what she built initially, I don't think was more than a $100,000 investment to get started.
Which is still a sizable amount of money. I guess the point is you can build it affordably. You do not need investors to help you achieve your vision, at least in a taped together 1.0 prototype. Okay? We're not talking about iPhone 6S or whatever number we're up to now. We're talking about something that is taped together. That's very easily buildable.
And honestly, that's a big part of what we look for. We look for a couple things when we're looking to invest. One is the entrepreneur, him or herself, is do we believe in that person and do we see their passion and do we think that they're bankable? But also, they don't have to have built the solution, but if they could architect it just enough that we can understand what it's going to look like and how it'll be different, there just has to be enough there to agree that we want to invest in this person to build that out and see if there's something there.
I love this question. I wish you had written your name. I would have given you a bravo for this one. Is it ethical to invest in need seekers and then market readers back to back? Your answer is going to reflect the entire venture capital industry, Bruce, so take your time in answering this
struggle
question.
with integrity. I don't know.
Good answer.
in my mind, I want to back people who are solving the problems that need to be solved. And if version 1.0 is a company that is the need seeker that's figuring it out, but then someone comes in that can do it better behind them, is that selling out the first company, or is that supporting the second company to solve the problem in a better way, which is all you really wanted to do in the first place, which was to solve a problem? And in many cases, what will happen is the market will speak for you.
Oh, he's being polite. So here's what happens. Here's what happens. You place bets on both. It really is it's a Darwin play, survival of the fittest. And whenever one company has a little bit of an edge over the other, then if you're the investor, you're going to strong arm, and that is the term, you're going to strong arm the weaker one to be acquired by the stronger one.
Yeah. Although I will say, when we place a bet on a company in a particular space, we will not invest in one of their competitors.
Well, not competitor, but in this case here, need seeker and market reader. That was the question. So it isn't necessarily, I mean, in a competitive way, sure, they're in the same industry, they're doing certain things. But what happens in reality is just that. It is Darwinism, survival of the fittest. It's survival of those companies that can adapt, not just the ones with the strongest, with the biggest bank account and the strongest technical team, although that helps. And the marketplace that Bruce referred to is usually consists of vulture investors, investment bankers, which are sometimes one and the same. I am one, so I know this. And the market figures it out. And yes, people lose. Companies lose, executives lose, founders lose, investors lose. It's not always zero-sum game, but there are losses here, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Good question. Different companies innovate in different ways. You've changed jobs, Bruce, but you've been in the industry. How do you keep innovating, you yourself, professionally speaking? How are you an innovator with different companies and with different cultures in those companies?
That's a great question. How do I keep innovating? So I would say that it's really staying close to understanding the problems that I see in healthcare. And so I learn from each experience that I have and each company that I move forward with. And up until I joined Martin Ventures, I was always working for one company at a time. So I would always take the experiences that I had with the new reality of the landscape of where healthcare was and kind of built off of what we had done before to advance the next company. One of the things that I really enjoy about the position I'm in now is I can help affect not only one company at a time, but we've invested in a couple dozen companies. So you really get the benefit of learning from each of those experiences. But again, it's all about innovating to address the problems that the market faces today and in the foreseeable future.
And yet, what are your core values that you as a professional adhere to?
Well, the question came up about integrity, and I will tell you that I look back on my career, and probably the thing around which I am most proud is you could probably ask virtually anyone that I've worked with or customers that have bought from me or partners that I've collaborated with, and I don't think you'd come across anyone who would say, I would not work with Bruce Brandes again. And I think that I've been very mindful to make sure that whatever company I was representing, if I didn't believe it was the right solution, I had to be honest with myself and with the customer about that. And so I would tell you that the fundamental core value that I've taken with me at every stop in my career is to maintain my integrity, to do the right thing for the people whose issues or problems I'm trying to solve. And if I can't solve it, I need to be aware enough that I can't and to move on. And I think that's why hopefully I've personally built a reputation that has some reflection of some integrity.
And here's some professional perspective. You read it in a press release and they'll say the management team disbanded because of differences in the direction of the company. They do not write in the press release the management team disbanded because the CEO was doing very unethical things. That's not written in a press release because that would be fodder for the lawyers. But you can pretty much delve into those situations and come up with those kind of situations.
And I've actually, I had a situation where the company that I left IBM for was a niche software company that we grew and took public and ultimately sold to a company in 1997, which was HBO and Company, which was actually the second highest performing stock in the 90s on the NASDAQ. It was this incredible high flyer roll-up company. But when we sold to them and I got to know their leadership very quickly, and I knew them by reputation, and then when I got to know them, I really questioned the ethics of how they were doing what they were doing, and I immediately left. And 6 months later, as it turns out, it was revealed that they were cooking the books, and a number of them went to jail, and they actually sold the company just before that to McKesson, which is a Fortune 50 company, and it tanked their stock for 10 years, and it was a horrible thing. But I at least realized that fundamentally the integrity alignment wasn't there, and that does happen.
When do you feel that innovation has failed and has made things worse? And when that does occur, do you attempt to revert back to the old way of doing things, or do you just keep moving forward?
So I was with a company called Eclipsys, which was an electronic medical record company in the early 2000s. We had the first-in-class electronic medical record system for hospitals. We were winning all the deals that we were engaged with. Our customers loved us. And our CEO had an idea for an innovation that this shouldn't be a software-based platform. This EMR should be web-based. And if you think about the bandwidth of the internet in 2001, 2002, 2003, the complexity of the rules that had to fire for a doctor to enter in an order, for example, it just didn't have the bandwidth for response time to be acceptable. When we made that announcement that we were going to develop that, the whole market froze to wait and see what we were going to do. It was a great idea for an innovation. It failed miserably because response. So we went back to the old technology, but we lost about 18 months in the market where others kind of leapfrogged us. And while we went back to the old product, others had already moved ahead, and frankly, the company never recovered. Ultimately, it sold in 2010. But that's an example of a big, bold bet on innovation that sunk a company because it wasn't right. And the great irony was it was the right idea. It just wasn't the right time because today all the new electronic medical record companies are cloud-based. Mm-hmm. And so it was the right vision. It was just 10 years too soon.
Yeah, and do remember, innovations don't always succeed because the timing is wrong, and luck may not be on your side either. And we successful or unsuccessful innovations can always trace some part of that to luck, having it or not having it. So absolutely. Question, Bruce, with healthcare being such a large industry, how does one execute small-scale ideas or innovations, problem-solving innovations, into such a large-scale market?
I think you really have to segment the totality of healthcare and look at what specifically are you trying to solve within that broader ecosystem, and who are the people who are affected by it, and how can you help them? Back to the example at Airstrip, solving specifically for obstetricians practicing in hospitals. This one thing that made a better use of their time, that made it safer for babies to be delivered. That was a pretty narrow focus in a $2.7 trillion industry. But where that has now since evolved is Airstrip as a mobility platform actually is poised to disrupt all of the incumbent medical device companies, patient monitoring companies, and electronic medical record companies that have charged tremendous amounts for their products and services that are, frankly, could potentially be disrupted by a device like this, and commoditizes which brand of medical record or of patient monitor you have. So it all came from this very little narrow sliver, but it could be a major disruptor in affecting and eliminating cost, a significant amount of the cost that's in that $2.7 trillion.
And the follow-on question is, how do you execute on this? Now, let me answer this with giving a telecommunications perspective. The consumer user always answers. For example, who has their phone permanently affixed to the wall anymore? See, if we asked that question 35 years ago, everybody would say, well, of course my phone's to the wall, because that's where the phone was. The technology allowed the phone to go in your pocket, which was unheard of then. Can you imagine taking a phone that size that we knew in your pocket? I mean, you probably saw the bridge to that was in the original Wall Street movie. Gordon Gekko walking on the beach. Bud Fox, this is your wake-up call. He has a brick to his ear. None of you would be caught dead with a brick to your ear. And that was probably 1980, and that was the coolest thing on the planet.
Oh, yeah, and frankly, I think it probably cost, what, $50 a minute
right.
for that phone conversation?
Exactly. So remember, the customer decides. The customer decided in telecommunications. The only reason why you have a landline phone right now is probably because of a security alarm system at your residence. Does anybody own a landline? Does anybody have a landline phone at their apartment? No. So do you think, when you have your own homes and families, do you think you're going to order a landline phone for your home?
Man, I'm old. I still have my landline. It's only because I'm too lazy to cancel it.
You have a phone at home that's connected?
Yes
or no?
Yes.
Oh.
I've never answered it. The only calls that come in are salespeople, so it's only a matter. It's bundled in with my internet and
to our colleagues in Edge,
cable.
If you can get yourself, we'll get you Bruce's home address so you can get your picture taken with it. Ladies and gentlemen here on campus, we're not going to have the lecture this afternoon. We're going to each have our own picture taken.
Did I just lose all credibility?
With this dinosaur.
I just discredited everything that I have said all day, right?
Wow.
I meant, no, I don't have a landline. Integrity, right?
And you know the best thing is, Bruce's poor daughter on campus is probably mortified. Don't worry, we will not mention your name. Oh, that's Beautiful.
Oh.
And you call
Oh, wait, hold on. Ask the question. How many of your parents have a landline still? Some.
Oh,
okay,
get
thank
out
you.
of there.
All right. I feel much better now.
They've disowned their parents for having the landline. But disruption is a constant present in engineering. And that is the opportunity for these engineers, whether they're currently working in industry, as most of our EDGE colleagues are doing, or these students on campus, and undergrad and grad. They are going to see disruption being riding shotgun with them in their career for their entire, well, probably you're going to get a 20-year wave where you can ride the wave without being disrupted out of your current industry or career. I hope you realize that. Not that the time is ticking away on you, but you're not going to be able to ride that for 40, 50 years. No way. So enjoy the next 20 when you're starting to work. But here's a question. Internet of Things. You mentioned the phone. That is arguably the world's first Internet of Things device. The Internet of Things has already exploded on the scene. And technology and disruption like that cannot be captured. You can't corral it and say, no, we don't want it anymore.
That's right.
So how does one accept the inevitable?
So, you know what I'll compare that to is specifically in healthcare. One of the I talked about how hard it has been to innovate and make change over the last 25 years. One of the biggest restrictors was the fact that you had a lot of physicians who basically said, I'm not going to do that, whatever the technology was that you were trying to bring to them. And it's really interesting to see the evolution of these physicians who've resisted it, and as younger physicians come on board and, having grown up with technology, expect it. And so it used to be anyone over 35, you could never get them to use the electronic medical record system or any of these technologies. Now what's happening is those people who've resisted it are now probably in their late 50s, early 60s. And interestingly, one of two things is happening. One is they likely have this device anyway, and so they're starting to use the technology because it's made their life easier in every other way, so now they're a little bit more receptive to it. Or they're dug in and have said, I'm going to retire before I ever use this technology that this hospital is bringing to me. And so it's forcing a lot of physicians into early retirement because the government actually now mandates that certain things have to be documented on medical records, no longer on paper. And so doctors who are resisting it are basically being forced into retirement.
They're no longer practicing, they're not being restricted from practicing medicine, but it's what they need to do in order to practice medicine. That's driving them out of the business.
Well, actually, their reimbursements for today, if they're not in their practice, if they haven't implemented an electronic medical record system and have certain capabilities that they're able to do, their reimbursement from Medicare and Medicaid is slashed significantly. So it's not directly forcing them to retire, but the reality of the effect is that.
Here's a question. If you find a solution that you think isn't the best, or you don't agree with the market, or if you don't agree with, but the market shows promise otherwise, do you still invest in the solution for the market opportunity alone, knowing that the solution is probably not the best one for that situation?
We've made those mistakes in the past, and I would term those mistakes generally, and again, it's knowing when to check your ego. Sometimes you're going to be wrong and pass on investments that really do have great success. But by the same token, if your gut's telling you that this is not going to work, and even if you, we see this every day, we actually have an investment thesis. We've identified specific areas we want to have a solution to solve this problem and this problem and this problem, and we will go company by company, and we will continue to pass until we find the right entrepreneur that we are willing to bet on to solve that problem. And I can rattle off a few areas that we believe in healthcare need to be disrupted, and we have not yet found the entrepreneur that we want to bet on yet. There are plenty of companies that are out there, but we've passed on them because someone's going to be successful in solving that problem, but we're not sure who it is, and we didn't feel like it was these people, so we just chose to abstain for now.
And I'll add to that, investors buy that, let's call it the institutional investors, They certainly have conviction, as Mr. Brandis just described, and they have their own thesis about why they're going to invest. But then there's the other pole that investors are lemmings. You know what a lemming is. So lemmings follow, and because it's sort of the power of the crowd. So if you don't think there is power in that, at the next Gator football game in the fall 2015, when the wave starts in the swamp, most likely you're going to do the wave. Right? You just go along with it. You're saying no. Gordon, I don't either. The wave was cool about 25 years ago. And every time we go to the game, my girlfriend does the wave, and I say, I can't believe you're doing the wave. I won't judge you, though. Go ahead, do the wave.
I just want to be able to be back in the days when I can be focused on the game and know that I want to watch the game more than I'm thinking I would like to do the wave to entertain myself.
No, not going. Tebow's not coming back. It's not going to happen.
I was actually thinking Danny Werfel.
Oh, whoa! I bet you Danny has his phone at. Never mind. Faison asked this question. I have my answer for this one. What if the company you work for places restrictions on innovation? How do you innovate in such an environment?
Gosh. Did I tell you that I switch companies every 3 to 5 years? I mean, if you're by nature an innovator and you're at a company that doesn't embrace it, much less is squashing it, there are plenty of other companies that would benefit from having you.
Yeah, exactly. Just resign. Honestly.
And by the way, you're not going to change the culture of a company.
No. And you're probably not going to change the culture if it's your own company. You're going to have to be rewarded by some incentive to do so, or you're going to be punished by some penalty to do so. So, I mean, it's just human nature at that point, why you would change, why you would move. When selecting companies to invest in, how do you balance potential monetary benefit with the benefit the company's product can provide to the world? Well, this is going to be a good answer. I know who you are. Come on now. You're a Shark Tank investor, man. You don't care. On. Goody two. Okay, Mr. Goody Two Shoes, tell us. When you invest in a company, how do you potential money return versus the good of the world?
Well, actually, I will tell you that Charlie Martin, who formed our company, who's a lifelong hospital executive in Nashville, spent 50 years building hospital systems, had tremendous success. Within Martin Ventures, he actually spun out Martin Ventures from a fund that he had that was investing in more philanthropic things that he had he invested in a bookstore and in a restaurant and in some other cultural things that he knew had no real economic returns, and basically put it in a different bucket. I mean, we are in business to invest in companies that will be profitable. They don't have to be profitable right away. They don't have to even have a commitment as to what they're going to do, but we have to believe that it's going to be profitable ultimately. But there is a place, and there are other ventures and people who will invest and give money, but that's more philanthropic.
And I'm teasing Mr. Brandis because I'm such a big fan of Bruce and what he does in his career, and I know that he would never be involved in anything. But there's the whole thing of social entrepreneurship, and many corporations are very much philanthropically oriented, and you'll have lots of activities going on the philanthropic side. And if you don't believe that philanthropy pays, please appreciate that Tom Shoes, founder, sold one-half his company to a private equity firm for lots of money, and the private equity investor said, we want to continue on your philanthropic mission. So it's there. Do well by do good, for sure. Absolutely. What innovation do you predict will be the groundbreaking innovation in healthcare? This is filmed now.
Well, I wish you had asked me that question 10 years ago, because I actually made a bet and I think I was right.
Okay, let's hear about it. Hawk, this is a great question. Thank you.
And I think it's now, and actually my answer today is actually the same as what it was. It wasn't quite 10 years ago, but 7, 8 years ago, which is I think this device changes everything for healthcare. I think it changes everything for a lot of industries, but we saw it when we started Airstrip. I joined shortly after it was founded, but I would bet you the fact that you have every person in the world with access to a very powerful computer like this, it really is a game changer, and we have not yet begun to really feel the impact of what it will have. The basics are being put in place today, but one of Airstrip's greatest areas of growth today is internationally, to provide access to care in Africa, in South America, in India, in Australia, and all these remote communities that frankly didn't invest in the $2.7 trillion worth of infrastructure that we have a year in the US. But what they have are people in need who have access to a cell signal and a device like this, who can then tap into a network of the foremost neurologist at Mount Sinai University Medical Center, who can now, or at Cleveland Clinic, a cardiologist who can now consult on a case in some rural African community, and you have access to that. So I really think serving two purposes. One, I think it can significantly impact the economics of healthcare, but more back to the social good. I think that the quality of people's lives will be extended because of the access to healthcare that this portal creates globally.
I don't have an answer. Mr. Brandis is spot on this. I don't have an answer about the technology, but I do have a reflection about where we're going, and you're going to chuckle over my answer. But medicinal marijuana is going to impact the segment of a section of the population, because it's going to be a new industry that has remarkable applications, and it's layered upon layer. And I'm saying this to you because I think you need to think progressive about some of the things that are going to happen in your lifetime that will enable this kind of, I don't know, fulfillment. I mean, think about it. If you were not a progressive thinker, you wouldn't imagine that a phone would be in your pocket. You would say, well, the phone has always operated that way. And so that's just something to consider. Bruce,
I'm going to go ahead and bet on the phone, by the way, if I had to.
Bet on the phone versus medicinal marijuana? I'll bet you $1. Right. I don't know how we're going to measure it. You might buy me a new phone. I might buy. Oh, no.
Well,
I will. We can delete that on the tape. You know? I will ask this question to end with, and I don't know this from you. Where does your motivation in life and work come from?
That's a great question. It's funny. When my first job out of school was with IBM, and it was a sales role, I really had to take account of what do I really care about, because I thought of, especially preaching to the choir here with a bunch of engineers, you think of a sales guy, you think of somebody in a shiny suit with a bad comb-over haircut trying to sell you something you don't really need and not really adding a lot of value. So I really had to reconcile with a career based on sales and what do I really care about. And I would tell you that the reason I gravitated to healthcare is because I really believe that I can make a difference. And if you ask me what I do every day, everywhere in my career, every step I've taken, I could argue that I'm in sales, or I'm selling this application, or we build these kind of companies. But at the end of the day, I believe that I'm helping doctors and nurses to save people's lives, and I believe that I'm enabling people who are sick to have access to care that they might not otherwise have. And fundamentally, I believe the companies that I've been part of have helped to advance that mission, and that's what continues to drive me.
Well, Bruce, that is absolutely a reflection of who you are. Not only are we thrilled that you're a fellow Gator, Bruce serves as the entrepreneur in residence in the College of Business here at the University of Florida. So I wanted to say thank you again for sharing with us your insights and perspective. And as always, welcome back home. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bruce Brandis.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we'll take a break now, and colleagues in Edgeland, we'll see you for the lecture portion of the series today. And